Hello, good morning, good day, good afternoon, good evening, whenever you are going to watch this particular video. So for this lesson, we are focused on the research paradigm, methods, and tools. So the subtopics that we are going to cover for this lesson would be research paradigms, research methods, and research tools. So paradigm, what's a paradigm? Is a worldview, a general perspective on the complexities of the real world, paradigms for human inquiry are often characterized in terms of the ways in which they respond to basic philosophical questions. So disciplined inquiry, that is research, is being conducted mainly within two broad paradigms. So one paradigm for research is known as positivism. Although strict positivist thinking has been challenged and undermined, a modified positivist position remains a dominant force in scientific research. Now, positivism, to understand this, is a reflection of a broader cultural phenomenon which emphasizes the rational and the scientific. So you can just say anything or deduce anything without basis. So in the humanities, positivism is referred to as modernism. If you are going to look into this timeline, you divide the years and this be that of modern period. And the succeeding years will be considered the postmodern period. So this rooted in 19th century thought. If you remember also your philosophy classes that discussed Comte, Niels, Newton, Locke, and positivism, the fundamental ontological assumption of positivists is that there is reality out there that can be studied and known. So what's an assumption? So it's a basic principle that is believed to be true without proof or verification yet. You just assume without knowing yet if it's true or not. Wala pa. You still don't have the proof, okay? So that's why it's called an assumption. Now, the related assumption here is for this positivism is determinism, which is the belief that phenomena, so those occurrences in our society, so those happenings, no, are not haphazard or random events. They don't just happen, but rather they have antecedent causes. So here, it's cause effect. So when there is something that happens, we're going to say that it must be because there's a cause. So there must be one or more reasons that can be potentially identified and understood over something. So for example, there is an illness. So there must be one or more reasons. Now, another paradigm for research is known as the naturalism. Just as positivism reflects the cultural phenomenon of modernism that burgeoned in the wake of Industrial Revolution, the naturalism is a counter movement to positivism. It is an outgrowth of the pervasive cultural transformation, usually referred to as postmodernism. Here, it represents major alternative system for conducting disciplined research. So it's an alternative to the other paradigms. The naturalistic paradigm assumes that knowledge is maximized when the distance between the inquirer and the participants in the study is minimized. So with this then, this paradigms means that the voices and interpretations of those under study are crucial to understanding the phenomenon of interest. So you better go near to your respondent. Unlike the positivism wherein you may obtain information even just from secondary data or even through leaving a questionnaire to the person. Whereas in the naturalism, there is subjective interactions, no, that are primary way to access interpretations. So the findings from a naturalistic inquiry are the product of the interaction between the inquirer and the participants. The interviewer is very near, so that the interviewer can hear, can listen to the answers or the responses of the respondents. Broadly speaking, research methods are the techniques used by researchers to structure study and to gather and analyze information relevant to research question. So the two alternative paradigms have strong implications for the research methods to be used. So let us have this matrix. So these are the research paradigms: positivism, naturalism, that we just discussed. And that positivism is really quantitative in method, and naturalism is qualitative in method. That here you can be from afar, but here you need to be close to each other, the researcher and the participants. And the tools used differ as well, which we are going to discuss more in a while. So for these two methods now, that is based on the two paradigms, quantitative from the word quantity, ask the question how many, whereas qualitative from the word quality, ask the question why. Basically, this is for generalization, for prediction. So you need to engage more people to ask, like hundreds of people to ask. Whereas this one, you don't need a lot of people. You may need only a few, very, very few people to ask for this. And even with just one person, you will have depth of information. Your data will be voluminous because of the detailed responses to the why question. Whereas this one, all you need to do is just count how many said yes to your question, and you are going to have that into percentage. But of course, when you compare the two, it will be the quantitative that is given the budget, because policymakers take into consideration the magnitude, like the pandemic, for example. So it gets budget because it's affecting a lot of people and not just isolated case or one in a million. There is flexibility between the two research paradigms. We said that positivism is quantitative and naturalism is qualitative, but sometimes the positivists engage in qualitative studies, and the naturalistic researchers sometimes collect quantitative information. So there is that flexibility in the two paradigms, in the two methods. While you are doing quantitative research, you can have qualitative backup. So your method may be both quantitative, qualitative, so that there will be stronger conclusion that you can draw from your research. Quantitative researchers use deductive reasoning to generate hunches that are tested in the real world. Quantitative researchers, in fact, use mechanisms designed to control the study, and that is absent in qualitative research. No, there's no control in qualitative research. When we say control, what does that mean? So it's imposing conditions on the research situation so that biases are minimized and precision and validity are maximized. How is control done? You are going to control factors actually that are not under direct investigation. So if you're going to study, for example, about obesity or compliance with a regimen or pain, you control only those that are not under direct investigation. Quantitative researchers gather empirical evidence so that there is no bias, no personal opinion, just facts. It's rooted in objective reality. So when you say empirical evidence, it's the observation that you gather through your senses: sight, hearing, taste, touch, or smell. For example, this one, sight. You can see these lines in here. That's empirical evidence. And you can hear the voice of the crying baby. Now, the quantitative researchers use deductive reasoning from general to particular to generate hunches that are tested in the real world. They typically move in an orderly and systematic fashion from the definition of the problem, okay, down through the selection of concepts on which to focus through the design of the study and collection of information to the solution of the problem. Actually, this shows that the quantitative researchers do research in orderly and systematic fashion from the start to the end of the research. Example, this pimple in here is visible through sight. Your heart rate after you jog in place, that can be measured, can be counted. The waistline after months of COVID-19 enforced stay home directive, which can be either of the two. So if you do exercise, you may have this. If you don't, and you just live sedentary life and then eat a lot, then you can have something like this or bigger than this. Now, these research methods, case study, survey research, experiment, feasibility study, and the criteria to better understand. So of the four, the case study is generally qualitative. When to use case study? When objective is to observe a process in depth. That's why they make use of a diary in data gathering, because they're going to record from the onset to the finish. So they're going to record the 24-hour activity of someone who is, for example, a senior citizen who spends time playing chess in a plaza. Now, the survey research, I'm going to use this when objective is to have a general picture of people's awareness, knowledge, attitude, and behavior towards a thing, event, or situation. So you may study about knowledge, attitude, and behavior of people regarding COVID-19 protocol, something like that. And you need to ask a lot of people. Now, primary data that is based on responses of sample or total population. If the population of your study and there are just about 50 people, so you can have complete enumeration. So you can involve the whole population. But if you are engaging a whole province, so you cannot cover everyone in the province. It's voluminous. The magnitude is so great. So you just need to obtain a sample. So that's why you conduct a survey or research. So the scope is generally broad and the depth is extensive. The duration is generally limited because you are doing a survey research. You can actually finish it in few days or weeks. And the design is generally complex. The control is slightly controlled. Now you can use questionnaire or interview schedule, and the reporting of data is generally quantitative using a statistical analysis. So quantitative, that is survey research. Natural science people use experiment in the biology department, chemistry, physics, so they are using experiment method usually. We have in the social science an adaptation of this, and we call it quasi-experiment. Now, feasibility study, if you want to find out economic viability of establishing a certain structure or institution, you can conduct a feasibility study. Internet cafe, for example, in a particular area. Is it what will the people patronize that particular business venture? That's why you need to conduct a feasibility study first before putting it up. But for the quantitative focus, most engaged would be survey research. And then we can have quasi-experiment that we compare two groups of people. For these research techniques, questionnaires, interviews, observation, focus group discussion, the lower parts are more on qualitative. And if you ever use questionnaire and interview, you need to have a guide, question guide, interview guide for the interview. And when you observe, you have observation guide. And we have focus group discussion. It involves 5 to 10 people in a circular form. The questionnaires and interviews are really used for quantitative method, and it can be structured, semi-structured questionnaire. What's the difference between the two? The structured questionnaire contains questions on that paper, answerable in circle or check, whether you answer yes or no, agree or disagree, satisfied or not satisfied. Now, there may be gradation of responses like very satisfied, satisfied, undecided, not satisfied or dissatisfied, that or strongly agree to strongly disagree, something like that. That is structured. But if you are going to have questions like if yes, why? If no, why? Then that will be semi-structured questionnaire. So it is the respondent who will write the answers on the questionnaire. But the interview, you are going to use the so-called interview schedule. The interview schedule can also be either structured or semi-structured. So now the interview schedule that you are going to use is in actual interview, the interviewer with the respondent. It is the interviewer who will record. So ask the question, then record the responses on the interview schedule. So that's the basic difference between the two. It's possible that there will be unanswered questions in the questionnaire compared to the interview schedule. Because you are there, you may be able to answer the questions of respondent, which you cannot do with questionnaire. So let me show you examples of a guide used in qualitative research and questionnaire that is used in quantitative method research. So this is from quantitatively done research. So part 1, personal profiles, and then the respondent can answer here. Or if you are going to use this in an interview, the researcher, the interviewer can write the responses here now during the interview. So look at this, which can be filled by the interviewer or the respondent itself. But this is how detailed. And then this one, perceive nurse work environment. These are the gradation of the responses for 3 to 1, from more favorable to not favorable. In here, the respondent is not given the chance to answer undecided. The respondent must really decide whether favorable or not. Just check. So this is an example of structured questionnaire. Let's now have Appendix C, interview guide. Description of Filipino nurses working in the hospital in terms of number, positions held, length of work. This is just a guide. So you see the difference between the two, the questionnaire and the guide. We are going to end here and see you in the next lesson.